Hello guys, and welcome back for another breakdown video. For this week's breakdown video we have a pretty broad topic. We're going to talk about limiting factor and how it affects your workouts, your strength pieces, or the entire overall fitness of an individual. So let's jump into this breakdown video. So what we want with this movement is a violent hip extension accompanied by a upward pull. So guys, in CrossFit we have a lot of different exercises and we tend to favor the compound exercises over the isolation exercises. So we tend to favor the movements which incorporate a lot of different muscles at the same time, like a squat or a deadlift, over the isolation exercises like a hamstring curl, which is of course okay. But the problem is that every individual has different limb lengths and has a different history in sports. This oftentimes results in individual weaknesses. So one individual maybe has a weak glute and the other individual may be lacking in quad strength. So when both of these individuals do a back squat, one individual will create adaptations in the glutes and maybe the other individual will create adaptations in the quads, depending on factors like their sports in history or the limb lengths. So in this example, it could be a vital thing to check up on an individual what their own limiting factor of a specific functional / compound movement is. So in the back squat, what aspect of their body is limiting them the most from grabbing more weight on the bar or potentially increasing their power output? It could be the stability inside their spine or in the core. It could be the stability in the hips, could be quad strength, glute strength. We could go on and on forever, but it's pretty important to check up what aspect of the body inside the compound exercise is limiting them the most, because the chain is only as strong as their weakest link. That is very true. If you see an individual squat with a rounded back, stability is lost, the power output in their lower body will be decreased and the weight on the bar will be lower. So the entire body is working to get the bar up inside the back squat. And that's how you analyze, and that's the basic principle of the limiting factor. Looking at the aspect that is limiting them the most from increasing the output and identifying the issue. So that's with a strength exercise. So then again, if you have that individual that has a pretty strong glutes, but the quads are weaker in comparison to the glutes, and they've got those strong glutes from doing a lot of squats, it is not a smart option to keep them doing the same squats if they want to improve their entire body and if they want to increase on their limiting factor, so the quads, because they got to this point using that exercise and their body likes to use the glutes more than the quads. So we need to manipulate the position of the bar, we need to manipulate the position of the joints in order to create adaptations in their weakest link. So that's for favoring a specific muscle inside a compound exercise. Exercises like deadlifts that we use the lower body for, but we have the hands on the bar, it's very important to notice that if the forearms are really weak, we will be limited by our grip, so we will not be able to pull more weights off the ground. This is a really vital thing if we want to train the hamstrings, the glutes and the lower back more, but we are limited by our grip. Our lower back, hamstrings or the entire posterior chain will not get enough attention to grow because it's limited by the forearms. It is able to get more weight on the bar. The muscles on my back, so my posterior chain muscles, the hamstrings, the glutes and the erectors and more, are able to do more weight with a deadlift, but I am limited by the fact that the bar is slipping out of my hands. So I'm not able to grab more weight on the bar that my body is able to handle. So my limiting factor now is my forearms. So a really easy way I'm already doing right now is to grab a mixed grip. That's the reason that you see a lot of individuals do it like this, because on this side we have 4 fingers, on this side we have 4 fingers, and on this side we have 1, and on this side we have 1. So if it rolls this way, we have this hand, and if it rolls backwards, we have this hand to keep it in the same position. Instead of having both hands on top, we have 8 fingers against 2 thumbs. That's not in balance. So when we keep the grip like this, your limiting factor, so the grip, will limit the hamstrings, glutes, erectors, / posterior chain to get adaptations from a big weight. But here comes the point. What if your biggest limiting factor is not a specific muscle, but is an aspect of fitness? So that would mean that motor control or your coordination is limiting you from increasing your overall fitness. Would it then be really vital to grab a mixed grip? Not necessarily, because you're limited by how the body moves and where the joints are in space. So the weight will probably be lower, and you will not be limited by the forearms, so the bar will not slip out of the hands due to the weight being low enough for the body to handle. So that is when limiting factor hides in a specific aspect of your fitness. For now, for a lot of beginners, it's motor control. So that being that you don't know how to move with a specific exercise, but limiting factor could also be just mobility or stability. I made an example of this with a back squat. When the hips are really unstable or the core is really unstable, the body will... So like the example I just gave with a squat, if the stability in the body is lower, then the body will have a hard time to exert forces properly into the ground, which will result in a lower output in power. So if we want to increase our output, we should focus on stability of the core or of the hips, or maybe both, depends on the individual. Of course, the aspect could also just be a limiting factor. So if we weigh gymnastics with strength or longer conditioning workouts with shorter ones, that could also be a limiting factor. So the reason I made this video is to make you aware of the fact that every individual has a different limiting factor, and it depends on the history of sports, but also on the point that you're on now. It could be your age or your training age in CrossFit / fitness. If you're just a newbie and you've just started CrossFit, you are probably limited by your motor control / your coordination. Make sure that you focus on it. If you are a dude that has been sitting on the office for 20 plus years, and you know that the shoulder becomes really stiff or your hips become really stiff, your limiting factor will probably be mobility, which is also a huge thing that could limit you from creating more output in power. Think of when you want to do a snatch, but you're not able to catch it deep enough, so you will have lower weight on the bar. Now your biggest limiting factor is the ability to get underneath the bar and deep into a overhead squat. So your limiting factor is basically mobility, not the snatch, not your coordination, not your speed, not your strength, but only mobility is your biggest limiting factor from getting under the bar inside the snatch. So make sure that you do recognize that every individual has a limiting factor. You also have a limiting factor. Make sure that you focus on that and that you increase on your weakest link as much as you can. Again, we have certain limiting factors that we need to manipulate a little bit, like the deadlift, that we use a mixed grip in order to get more weight on the bar, but that's just for one example. So those are the basics of our interpretation of limiting factor inside of CrossFit. The purpose of this video was to make you aware that if we have 20 individuals and we make them go through the same program, every individual will have a different adaptation. And that is for one, due to everybody having a different limiting factor, and of course more stuff like their DNA, limb lengths, their seriousness, their sports history. But the purpose of this video is to see that exercises in CrossFit are big exercises. They use different muscles all together, and we need to analyze which specific part limits us the most from doing more. And that could be just a awareness point of, hey, I need to do more mobility, or hey, I need to get more motor control because my hips go from left to right, or my spine really rounds, or my core stability is fucked up. So I need to focus on that in order to get more weight on the bar. You can get serious results by not doing a specific exercise. You can really increase your back squat by not doing enough back squats anymore and focusing on your limiting factor. That could be hip or core stability. Again, it depends on the individual. So guys, I hope you like this video. I hope it's informative for you, and we'll be covering limiting factor in gymnastics in the next video, and then a limiting factor in Olympic weightlifting in the video after that. So make sure to subscribe on our channel to not miss out on those videos, and I see you next time with another breakdown video.